Hello, and today we'll continue with Chapter 2 of Nerus. So, last time we started Chapter 2 off with Sax being reunited with Nerus. Well, he's not really Sax, but instead his name is Obley. He was Obley, but then he died and he became a Sace-Sitter Sax, and then Sax died, and now he's Obley again. Apparently, as a Soulnesiac, he wasn't supposed to remember anything about himself or when he was Sax, or I guess, or when he was a descendant for the first time, but now he's a descendant for the second time. He was able to go against the odds, and now he has, and he was able to have those memories. So, like I said, Sax, well, Obley really, but Sax was able to reunite with Nerus, and we got to see the Crusty again. You know, he's like a descendant they live for. They're like immortal, so they don't really die of age. I mean, they live for hundreds or thousands of years, so like we got to see the Crusty for the first time in Body Elisa's time, which would be I think 1,000 years after this. And here we are back 1,000 years into the past, and we see the Crusty again. So we're going to continue with Chapter 2 for Nerus now. It was dark and stuffy. Each breath brought an uncomfortable feeling, like I had been breathing the same air for a long time. It had gone stale. I had woken up around 10 minutes ago, but I hadn't moved a centimeter except to adjust my stance. My 8 claws and my feet dug into the cloud-like cotton beneath me, butt raised and my arms and legs tense, ready to bounce like a spring being released at a moment's notice. After a few more minutes, the soft surface became unstable, and the weight of the blanket on me lessened as it was pulled up. The moment I felt the cool air hitting my face, I lunged forward. Whoa. A head butted Nerus right on the chin, lost his head back. I then fell on his chest with a satisfied smile plastered all over my face. I gave him a wide hug and started rubbing my face on his pectoral. It was a shame he had that bone sticking out his chest. I really wanted to bury my face right in the middle. He rubbed his chin with a bewildered look. Why would you do that, you little? Filled with righteous anger, Nerus roughly rubbed my head. In this I allowed myself to melt under his touch. However, filled with a rush of morning energy, I couldn't help but stab at his fingers. Meek as my jaw strength was, I didn't do any damage. I realized how uncalled for that had been, so I let go of his fingers and let them as an apology. But the way he laughed and went straight back to petting me made it seem like he was making fun of me, so in my irritation I bit him again. We repeated the cycle of petting, biting, and licking too many times for me to count. Adorable. Protested this insult to my hunter instincts, I grabbed his arm and held it tightly as I nibbled his knuckles. Not only seemed to endear him more, judging from the smile, though. After I eventually lost my vigor, Nerus lifted me from the armpits and got out of bed. He kissed me on the forehead before placing me down on the floor. You're never boring, Obley. Make fun of me while you can. I'll show you a little battle. I'll show you at the battle that I'm not a pushover. The problem right now is that you're too big to resist it. Whatever I do, you won't feel it. I will look forward to it. Much like he couldn't get mad at my shenanigans, I couldn't get mad at that uncharacteristic giggle of his. Memories of making fun of him for being so serious all the time and trying to make him laugh were coming back to me. Not that what had just happened had been a premeditated attempt at that. That was just my normal morning mood. I had a natural talent to make Nerus laugh, and I took pride in it. I wanted to see him smile more often. As we were getting dressed, Nerus noticed me staring at him. It settled the matter. I was thinking about what you promised yesterday. Do you remember it? I wonder. What could it be? Nerus looked up with a pout and a finger on his chin. Oh, don't play dumb. He was about to say something, but he bit his tongue at the last second. I figured he was going to say something lewd, but decided to change his approach. I wasn't nearly as much of a prude now as when I was sacked, so that kind of teasing wouldn't work on me anymore. I don't know what you're being, Obley. As far as I can see, I fulfilled my promise. I had a quiet night of sleep with you last night, just as I wanted. You behaved so well, too. I'm not falling for that. We were obviously talking about sex last night. Is that what you were hoping for? Nerus stepped closer and crouched in front of me. He reached out to my neck and slowly traced the lines of my gills with his fingers. That sensation sent a shiver down my spine, started me up. How come he still remembered all my weak points? Let's see, we still go eat breakfast now. We were playing for quite a while, so Cephals should be almost done cooking. But keep behaving, and I will reward you tonight. Maybe I will let you pick what I will do. Maybe I will let you pick what I will do to you. He accentuated that last part by caressing my gills again, and then tracing a short path from my neck to my chest with one of his claws. I could tell my voice would be shaky, but I felt like I needed to respond. Yes, be tripping over my tongue was a breaking point at which I felt blood rushing into my face. Nerus smiled and patted my head again. Adorable. We got dressed and headed to the dining hall. Cephals was in the middle of bringing the still steaming breakfast from the kitchen. I was worried I would need to go wake you up. Did you return very late last night? Not late enough to not catch a good night's of sleep. Nerus and I had our morning chit-chat while eating. As usual, I teased him over his questionable dietary choices while he scolded me for trying to mess with his food. Do you have any other plans for the day? Not really. All we can do now about the upcoming battle is wait for Cephals' decision and act accordingly. I do want to go visit my siblings for a while today. Do you want to come with me? I think they'll get along with you after you get to know each other. Nerus looked down at his food with a dubious smile. I'm not sure about that. Please, it'll be fun. I'll show you around the place. I'll do some paperwork and then we can go. Does that sound good? Excellent. It was the first time in 200 years Nerus set foot on Earth, not counting his visit to the descendant base the day before. And it was probably his first time interacting with the local mortals, considering the curious looks he gave to the nearly hairless primates. Lucasi had asked us if Nerus could say still to something less scary when bringing us home last night, and seemed to judge his disguised form would be good enough to move freely around the place. He was a bit too tall still, but he was able to pass as one of the blessed humans the Orcans had recently started to recruit. No one could question him as long as they saw him with me anyway. What is it? I was just thinking, it's strange how Nominal sent you here 200 years ago. You're lucky you didn't run into anyone else back then. Nowadays you can sort of fit, but these blessed humans didn't exist back then. truly. I was told I would be alright. It's not like Nomino to get his facts wrong. Nerus let out a curious hum. In any case, this is very curious. Descendants do often look after mortals, but it's unusual for them to do it so openly. Before the battle, you operated in secret, correct? Is it truly alright for you to be accompanying me without disguise? The entire planet suffered damage as a consequence of the Battle of Aeon. Usually we hide among mortals and act in secrecy. By our God judged, humans would go extinct if we didn't take a more direct approach. Still, it might not look like it, but humans are very dignified creatures. I bet the Archons and Orseros have had a very hard time getting them to cooperate. Is it normal for them to carry that much luggage around? We had come across many humans carrying suitcases, bags, or even carts with them. I figured Orseros must have ordered them to evacuate this and the surrounding areas. Nerus nodded meaningfully. I didn't used to be stationed in the base here often, but the contrast between this city from the one in my memories made the damage for the Battle of Aeon evident. And it was going to happen again. The few people we came across were a pale shadow of the crowds that once walked by these streets, which also used to be bursting with vehicles, buses, and motorcycles. Yes, those last few were oddly absent. The decline in the population was easily explained, but the destruction the Aeon caused. What was strange was the way they had seemed to progress technologically after that. Maybe most of their technology was destroyed, but wouldn't 200 years be enough for them to catch back up to their old level, especially with carcasses of their former creations all around them? That didn't fit with what I knew about human beings. Maybe the Archons and the descendants had meddled to make it like this. I don't suppose convincing Nomino to abandon his plans are option. There isn't any precedent for him backing down from one of his plans. Nerus was convinced that wasn't even a possibility, so I didn't insist any further. We walked into a public park which felt like a tiny hidden garden among the tall buildings. I remember this location, and while it was by no means unkempt, it felt less lively than I remember it being before the Battle of Aeon. The benches looked different. They probably had been rebuilt after the battle. The children's playground was the same. They still hadn't gotten the fountain in the middle back to working condition. We were close enough to the descendant base that we were starting to bump into many of my brothers. I exchanged a warm greeting and a hug with each of them, in stark contrast with Nerus' stoic introductions. Each time he stated his name, his occupation, and gave them a handshake if they were brave enough to accept one. Being sorry and noticing he wasn't completely welcome here yet, I couldn't blame him. Still, how could I break the silence between him and my brothers? There are so many descendants here. It's strange for me too. When coming to places like these, there were always so many humans. And we would have to disguise ourselves. Sometimes the humans would hold festivals, and we'd come to play at the stands or eat their food. I wish it still was like that. Maybe we could do that once the battle is behind us. I hope so. Hey, what do you say we sit with them? I pointed toward a small group of descendants relaxing under a tree. I had noticed Akutsi was there. He was the closest thing to a familiar face for Nerus beside me, so I hope his presence will help warm the others up to him. But considering what we had done to him the day before, it could backfire, but it was worth a try. I looked up at Nerus. He nodded and we started making our way over there. Oh, it's you guys. We sat down with a group. Some of the faces here were new to me, but they seemed to know about me already. walking around with a large face-shifter may be easy to recognize. Apparently, until now, they had been complaining about the humans being too slow to clear out and how difficult it had been to find shelter for them on such short notice. It wasn't just a matter of them having a roof over their head. Finding places with enough food and water to sustain all the people in the region had been a challenge. Some of these descendants were warpers that had been helping human families move out earlier that day. But anyway, once we sat down, the topic quickly shifted. So, could you be the friend of Obley told us about? Although the question wasn't directed at me, I made a lazy interrogative chirp. I had already gotten uncomfortable by sitting on a cavity between Nerus's crossed legs, and now I laid square across his thighs. Not only was it comfortable, but it made the others not want to interrupt my blissful state of relaxation. So once their curiosity took over, they directed their answer to Nerus instead. He told you he made a friend. It was long ago, right before the battle. He's very cheerful, going around saying he made a new friend. Obley has always been nice to us, but he's the kind that likes to expand his horizons, so I think he felt a little constrained back then. I think he was frustrated that he wasn't allowed to make friends with the humans. So when he came home one day, all happy-go-lucky and saying he made a friend, we were very curious about what had happened. I can still hear you, you know? Sounds like him, alright. Nerus patted my head, causing me to raise both arms and a leg in a long stretch. He also made sure to scratch under my gills a little. At that moment, the atmosphere changed slightly. He noticed from the looks the other descendants were surely giving him. So you guys are that kind of couple. Nerus, you weren't supposed to do that in public. Nerus flinched, confused. He realized a bit too late he had done something inappropriate. So I do not understand. I mean, we can forgive you for touching Obley's gills since you aren't a descendant, but you still shouldn't do that in public. If touched the right way, our gills served as erogenous zones. Since incest was forbidden among descendants, we weren't allowed to touch each other's gills in this manner. Nerus might not have been family, but there was still a taboo element to this act that made it uncomfortable for other descendants to witness it. Not to mention he wasn't aware this was considered a sexual act. That this is a misunderstanding. Obley, you never mentioned this. I switched lazy again. You never asked. Besides, isn't it obvious? What did you think it did, Tickles? Nerus started stroking my head so roughly it felt like it would catch on fire. I closed my eyes, grabbed his hands, and let out a fake scream. Everyone had relaxed and was laughing at our antics now. So you spend most of the day doing paperwork, huh? I was expecting the life of a great safe center to be more thrilling. What did you think the base would be like? Hope Obley didn't make it seem like we were all a goofy bunch. Not at all. I noticed from day one that he is unique. That's right. I got up from Nerus's lap and joined the conversation. At one point, one of the descendants asked about what had happened to me after being killed by the Aeon. I was taken aback for an instant. The truth was supposed to be a secret, so I should simply tell them I didn't remember, right? Would they get curious about why Nerus was with me as soon as I returned? Making up a story on the spot would be difficult. I played off my reaction as me being confused because I didn't remember. I don't know. I remember as much as the others. I looked at the custody, discreetly looking for help. Obley reappeared in the fountain yesterday, actually. We talked a little to bring him out the date, and then he disappeared off somewhere. I had to track him down. It turns out he took the portal to go meet with Nerus. Because he side-eyed me, poisoned his eyes. They got reacquainted very quickly and bullied me when I went after him. I see you immediately went back to your old antics, Oakley. This might be his biggest one yet, though. I'm inclined to agree. Thank you, Lacussi. I owe you one. Eventually, the group broke up as the time came for everyone to return to their duties. I informed Lacussi I would show Nerus around the base and bid him farewell. In the past, we had various bases of operations secured by one of our siblings that had infiltrated human society. The one I used to work at wasn't very active, but still had portal installations, which I guess made it a prime target for the safe centers. This space used to look like a normal apartment complex, but soon it had been rebuilt into a more extravagant building while I was away. I wouldn't be just showing Nerus around, but also getting reacquainted with the place. The entrance had been remodeled into a reception, behind which was the large room Lacussi had walked us to yesterday. Upstairs were a couple of offices in the meeting room where we talked with ourselves. They had expanded this part of the facility quite a bit. And above were the dormitories for the descendants. I suppose this part hadn't changed much since I was last here, despite being remodeled. Finally, we returned to the ground floor and took a staircase leading down to an underground passage. At the end of it, 2 doors awaited us. One of them led to the fountain Lacussi had mentioned. It was a place for the descendants to regenerate in the event of their death. Safe centers had similar installations in their settlements. Nerus seemed to never have needed it, considering his mansion lacked one. And behind the second door lay the portal room. It sounded extravagant compared to the mundane names of the other rooms, but there wasn't much to say about this place. It was a large cylindrical room. Multiple rings of rooms, imbued with the power of many warpers, were carved on the floor. And at the center of the room was a key. It looked like a stone ring with symbols carved on it, but it was a complex seal created by a warper, which stored the information of a certain number of locations and instructions to draw power from the rooms in the room. In a few words, it contained a list of locations the portal could take you to and automated the process. They were the simplest way to control portals, so easy even those useless at warping magic were able to use them. At the same time, that made them easy to exploit. One figured out. Nomino had carried out his plan by modifying a key so it would open a breach to the void rather than a portal. This has caused some other oddities, such as the surroundings of the teleporter being destroyed and turned into that second moon. Considering the moons had also become imbued with magic, I thought that phenomenon might have been related to the teleporter being unable to contain the energy needed to open and maintain the breach. In any case, the security there was healthier than I remembered. 4, 5, 6, 10. There were 12 descendants stationed here. Even Nerus was getting a tad nervous. Are you sure we should be here? It's fine. They are just being extra careful. They wouldn't want a safe center sneaking in. They wouldn't want a safe center sneaking it and opening another portal to some undesirable place, no? Well, I am a safe center, oblique. Just as he was saying that, the door opened behind us. My eyes widened with surprise when I saw who had come in. They weren't a descendant. Metallic footsteps echoed across the large room. A rusty robot wearing a long robe appeared from behind the door. The 7 pearl-like bulbs in his face lit up for a moment. Were those his eyes? Was he surprised to see us as well? He didn't seem to be too interested in me. How surprising. I heard there was a safe center visiting, but I couldn't believe it. And a great safe center, nevertheless. In the portal room, nevertheless, I could have sworn he was about to say, maybe this was a bad idea. I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Nerus, and you are Tip. His voice resonated as if it came out of a worn-out speaker. There was an oppressive aura around this person. Once he got over his initial surprise, he didn't seem very afraid. He crossed his arms behind his back and hunched over as if trying to make himself seem smaller. What did the students feel like yesterday when they saw Nerus walking the base's halls? No matter how you cut it, they knew that if Nerus held any ill will towards them, they would be burnt to a crisp. It was a wonder we hadn't been attacked on sight, not out of stupidity but instinct. I think mortals said this often. When faced with great danger, usually you react by running away or fighting. That was the kind of feeling this person gave me. I might just have walked out if it wasn't because Nerus held his ground, looking down at the robot with an impassible expression. He must be the one of the local organs. Correct. I was transferred here recently, so I don't believe we are acquainted, Obley. He turned to me, making me jump a little. No, I would definitely remember you. Were you summoned to help defend the base? And so, you must be strong. Does that pique your interest, Nerus? Nerus's ears twitched a little. It must have been irritating that everyone used his nickname so casually. It was probably my fault. That was all I called him. I'm sorry, but I don't like wasting time on activities such as spell matches. If you wanted to fight me, you would need to rejoin the safe center side. No, thank you. Obley here would give me worse than a few scratches if I did that. Besides, if I were looking to fight someone strong, then I'd still side with the descendants. I can tell you're powerful, but you don't measure up to nominal. He brought a hand to his metallic face, stroking his chin. Is that so? I wonder what is taking Ocero so long to allow you to help us then. I'll make sure to bring it to his attention. I wonder if Tim liked to nag people. So, what are you doing here? Or did you come to stand around? Oh, showing Nerus around. He isn't familiar with the facility, so why don't you get there hell yourself? As I said, Ocero still hasn't accepted your help. There's no harm in looking around, no? Do you plan to move here after the battle is over? I hooked my mouth open and thought. That wasn't part of the plan, no. Earth had some emotional value for me. It had been my home for a couple of years, but in its rundown state, it wasn't the sort of place I had envisioned to move with Nerus to. No, I would expect you to be more attached to your home. I've heard about you from the other descendants. Was it not your fault that the safe center attack went through? Nerus crossed his arms. I signaled him not to worry, suspected he was considering interrupting the conversation. I don't think I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not catch Nerus surveying the area prior to the battle and chose to not report it to your superiors? The battle at Aeon occurred because of a breach of security on the descendants' part. You aren't the only guilty party, but didn't it all start with you neglecting your duties? Pictures are following. You informed yourselves that you spotted a safe center in the vicinity. Wouldn't the descendants have better prepared for such an attack? After all, there used to be little to no safe center activity here. Nerus' presence was a clear tell that something was about to happen now. I went silent. As much as I tried to find fault with his reasoning, I couldn't do it. I couldn't make up excuses, but what good would that have done? Yes, you're right about that, and yet you don't seem regretful in the least. I can't say I had seen it from that angle until now, so yes, I would lie if I said I developed any regret over what I did. Not that not that you've had much time to think about it. You died during the battle and recovered your memories very recently. And even now, there's another battle on the horizon. What is the point of bringing this up now, exactly? Nerus took a step toward Tim, who simply tilted his head with curiosity. Oba committed a mistake, but there are no unamendable sins. Not as long as one chooses the path of repentance. You should consider being solidary to the people of this world. Once we win, he will have an eternity to enjoy his life. With that in mind, and spending a few decades fixing your mistakes that big of a sacrifice, I shook my head. No, I think I understand what you're trying to say. That was out of the left field, but I appreciate what you're trying to tell me. Thank you. After a moment of silence, Nels apologized to Tip, who didn't understand the reason for the apology. Then the robot suddenly nagged us to leave, saying we had been ordering for too long. That Tip seems like quite the character. He doesn't give off the same impression as the other orcans, right? He seems above them, somehow. I wouldn't know, but I'll take your word for it. Is he one of the original orcans? I'm sure he isn't. From what I could tell, he must have been created by mortals and then ascended somehow. I can't begin to guess what his circumstances must have been, but I imagine he must be one of those rare orcans who properly ascended into divinity. It gives off different energy from the orcans that were touched by the demiurge. It's the first time I meet someone like that. Indeed. Although I had found myself on the receiving end of the temp's scolding, I could tell it came from a good-natured place. I thought he might have been a good person. Still, that was only my first impression. When dealing with powerful beings like him, it was best to remain open-minded. At the very least, I was glad he was on our side. I placed my hands on the sides of Nerus' cheeks, looking deep into his eyes. There was that predatory gaze again. He did look at me like that because he knew I enjoyed it. It was comforting to be under that gaze, with his hands exploring every inch of me, preparing to claim me. Although he tried to leave some space for me to move or take the reins, I didn't do anything but what he directed me to do. He smiled, pulling me close for a kiss before rolling on top of me. The first time we did this, he had made me face away from him. I had been a bit disappointed. I wanted to look at him the entire time if possible, but I did as he wanted to please him. But he hadn't done that ever since. It was funny. Why did Nerus look at me like that? Did he not? Did he like the plays hard to get type? Did it gratify him to make someone like that submit to him? After all, hadn't he fallen for me as Sats because I didn't fit in line with the conversations and standards? Submitting to a man didn't mean to submit to a system, even if he upheld said system. If anything, it was me that seduced him to my side. Whether Nerus' reasons, I liked this. There was so much in my mind at the moment that holding on to him and forgetting everything was bliss. No, even leaving that aside, this felt right. I was made for Nerus. Yes, that thought brought me comfort. Feeling him in me, seeing that enjoyment reflected in his eyes. It was like a reformation of what I had to do, and it brought me to joy because I was fulfilling that objective. It didn't make sense to think about this. It felt natural, so it was all there was to it. So I held on to Nerus, whispering his name with need, and became his. It was what I was for. It took a few minutes for all the excitement to wear out and for me to realize just how tired I was. My body wasn't obeying me completely. I chose to bury my face on Nerus' chest. My forehead touched the bone in his chest. It was hard, but it emanated a pleasant warmth that steadily lulled me to sleep. I would have fallen asleep right then if Nerus hadn't spoken. There was something I wanted to ask you, Obley. I didn't sense him shifting to look at me, so I also remained as I was. What is it? Why did you not tell me what was happening? Yesterday it seemed like you had such a good grasp of the situation all along. Could you not have told us? His voice carried a hint of sadness. He was right to feel like that. I had hidden very important things from him and several. And all while they worried so much about me. I didn't want to keep it a secret, Nerus, but I clipped my tongue, trying to pick my words carefully. But I realized that there might not have been a nice way to put this. I realized now it was very stupid on my part, but I was scared. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't want to give you false hope, and I was afraid that it would change how you saw me. I brought my knees and tail up, curling into a ball where I clipped some of Nerus' fur. I was stupid. You were going to learn the truth eventually, so why didn't I bite down my fears and trust you? You truly can be an airhead, Obley. You spoke in a soft tone and caressed my back. If you never were a safe-sitter, if you didn't have Sax's memory so well. Didn't we already meet a long time ago? We never got as far back then as we did after you became Sax, yes, but do you not think we built our relationship regardless? I don't care about what you are, Obley. I love you for who you are. As long as you wanted to be with me, I think it would have worked out. Maybe you're right. Things aren't that simple. What I am is an important part of who I am, so I didn't want Sax to be erased. But maybe he had a point. After all, even if my memories had been erased, wouldn't Sax still live inside of Nerus' memories? What was I afraid of, exactly? This was one thing neither the passage of time nor death could touch. Not as long as the both of us will it. He visited the descendant base a few more times during the time leading up to the second battle of the Aeon. Technically, we didn't have much to do there, but Nerus seemed to want to indulge me, and we connected with my family. The thought I had when I just turned back still haunted me. I was Sax. My accidents dictated a strained relationship with my family. Osiris had been acting strange. While he was always serious and sort of stuck up, every time we crossed paths he had this unfamiliar weariness in his eyes. Just because I had turned back to Obley, it didn't mean I was free from Sax's cycles. I didn't know how or why, but something was bubbling up just under the surface that would permanently harm my relationship with his siblings. Well, it was just my hunch. Either way, it was best if I spent as much time as I could with my siblings. In the event something happened, at least I wouldn't regret it that much. But that was only wishful thinking. It was around 2 days before the battle. We had visited Earth to try out some human some old human games the descendants had been able to recover. But when the topic of the upcoming battle came up and they mentioned all the preparations they had been doing, Nerus inquired if the descendants did exercise or if they had some sort of training regimen. Nerus got fired up, saying he had been looking for a training regimen as of late. We ended up going outside and they were now practicing some routine. I sat on the grass, drinking some juice as I watched Nerus bond with some of my brothers. At some point, Nerus noticed me staring off into the distance and stopped by. "Are you feeling alright, Obley?" "Yes, why do you ask?" He looked depressed. Up until now, my worries had been piling up and had not reached the point where they showed in my face. Still, I didn't know how to articulate them, so not wanting to distract the wolf from his fun, I told him something so he'd move on. "I'm fine, I just had some weird dreams tonight." "Not nightmares, but the kind that leave you with this weird taste in your mouth the whole day, you know?" Well, if you need anything, don't hesitate to tell me." "Yes, thank you." Nerus wasn't convinced by my explanation, but he figured I would tell him whatever I was hiding once I was ready and didn't press the issue. I smiled bitterly at that blind trust he had in me. And yet there I was, still keeping things secret. That something bad was going to happen with my relationship with the other descendants was just a speculation, but last time I had come up with one of these theories I had been right. Was I wrong? Would it hurt to tell them what I thought? I didn't want to make excuses for myself, but perhaps bad habits like those are also the products of accidents. In that case, it was something I couldn't help. A few minutes later, Temp showed up and asked me and Nerus to come to speak in private. We followed him to an isolated part of the park. Did Osiris finally decide if we'll fight? Yes, he told me if he had a choice, he would rather the two of you weren't involved at all. However, he suspects you will attempt to force your way into the battle if we reject your help, so he will allow you to participate under the condition you follow his instructions. I can't blame him for not trusting us there. Tim proceeded to inform us about various details regarding the battle. What Osiris knew of the enemy's strategy, what strategies they would adopt to counteract them, what mistakes from the first battle to avoid this time around. And he told us about the strategy Osiris wanted us to follow. We were so close. If we could clear this final hurdle, we would have a bright future ahead of us. Said future would be built on top of this world's ruin, as well as the shapeshifters being denied the release they had come to yearn. But one's future is always being on top of someone else's ruin. It might be horrible to say, but I felt things were going their natural course. Was that true? Had there really not been any other solutions to this situation? Had we been lazy because we felt indifferent towards the destruction of a world that was already in ruins? Or were we just naive, not daring to imagine any solution other than siding with the descendants? Or perhaps it was time we lacked. Perhaps it was a mistake to be so focused on my family. I had asked Nerus if it was possible to sway Namino away from this plan and had made it clear that wouldn't happen. But so what? Namino was the leader of the shapeshifters, but this was only because he was backed up by his ability to contact the aliens. The shapeshifters didn't particularly like him. They were walking the only path they knew, the only path they thought would bring them peace, even if at the cost of non-existence. Had we been more dedicated or have had more time, perhaps we could have shown the other shapeshifters this wasn't their only option either. If I was able to win Nerus over to my side, was it really impossible to do the same with the other shapeshifters? Is that too optimistic of a risk? I suppose it's too late to regret that. Everything had already been set in motion, like the machinery of a train engine, transporting us to our scheduled destination. Nerus was standing looking off into the forest surrounding the house. He seemed to be trying to gauge something. His ears twitched when he heard me get closer, but he didn't turn back to me. "Are you okay, Nerus?" I wish Osiris let me be there in person. I do not understand why we need to do things in such a roundabout manner. Maybe he thinks you'll be more careful fighting near your house. You could level the entire place if you were to go wild on the battlefield. You make it sound like I'm a brute. Nerus caressed my head. I tried to answer by biting his hand, but he had too much height and strength advantage for me to be successful. In any case, I should get going now. Don't get too bored waiting here, alright? Of course. Good luck. You too. The sun had already set on Earth. Lacussi and I sat on the roof of a tall building overlooking the base. The two moons shine brightly in the sky with an intensity almost as fierce as that of the sun. So they're still imbued with magic from last time, huh? Did you say something, Obley? Oh, no. Well, I'll continue doing my rounds. You can wait here until the attack begins. Hey, Lacussi, yes? What do you think of ourselves? He tilted his head. What do you mean? Has he been acting strangely? In your opinion? I can't help but think he's been very cold to me ever since I returned, and I'm not sure why. Well, he must be annoyed that you went out of your way to activate the failsafe for his spell. I mean, not that I blame you for it, but I know, but why? Why were the Sarnesiac's memories wiped out in the first place? Don't you think it's strange? What are you getting at, Obley? Lacussi was surprised at me bringing this up suddenly, a complicated expression forming in his face. At first sight, there was nothing strange about what he did. He was just trying to save us. So I keep wondering why he felt the need to try to keep this a secret. You said yourself I didn't do anything wrong, so why is he so angry? My brother was at the loss of words, his mouth hanging open. After a long moment of silence, he raised his head and spoke to me. There are many things we don't know about Osiris, the demiurge, and the Aeons. I'm sure he's just worrying about us. Maybe he thinks you can figure out something you are not supposed to. Of course, that's kind of silly, right? Yes, I have no idea what he was trying to accomplish. Are you afraid Osiris will do something to you, Obley? I guess it's hypocritical of me to say this, considering I came here with the idea of eventually leaving with Nerus, but I love all you guys, and if possible, I want to be on good terms with all of you. So I find Osiris' behavior as a late concerning. Lacussi smiled reassuringly and put a hand on my shoulder. Don't worry, Obley. If something does happen, I'll be there to back you up. So don't be afraid. We will always welcome you. We reached out and pulled Lacussi into a hug. We remained like that for a short while. Lacussi had to get going, so I didn't want to keep him here much longer. It was a few minutes after that, something to an arc on the moon's surface before falling closer to the ground. It looked like some sort of flare, but I knew better. I covered my eyes. At the same time, the flare turned into a fierce explosion. A powerful explosion shook the building and almost caused me to fall on my butt. I heard all the windows below shatter simultaneously. Geez, they aren't holding back this time. They knew the descendants would be better prepared this time around, so to counteract that, they were adopting more drastic measures. After a few seconds, I opened my eyes. The view under me was not covered in a thick mantle of debris and dust, but I didn't need to be able to see to figure out the teleport room had been completely exposed in a blast. At least that meant there wouldn't be any nukes, or so I hoped. Enough wasting time, I had to get to work. I jumped on the railing in front of me, and slowly I took a step into the void. Countless shapeshifters were swarming the surroundings, either coming out of the hiding or teleporting in with the help of a warper. I had no shortage of targets. I latched to the first shapeshifter I could sneak up to and took him away. What the? Shh. It'll be over soon. Nerus threw a fiery punch towards the shapeshifter. To kill two birds with one stone, I swapped places with another shapeshifter on the battlefield in the nick of time. All I had to do was keep bringing shapeshifters to Nerus and he would dispose of them. But with how many there were here, it wouldn't have been a wonder if that forest surrounding his house ran out of trees before we were done. Occasionally, a shapeshifter would attempt to target me, in which case I would lure them to one of the traps laid by my brothers. The teleporter was exposed, but the surrounding area was still intact. The shields of the descendants had placed hadn't gone to waste. And since I could approach or run away from the enemy at my leisure, they turned out to be very useful tools to me. I managed to get a few dozen shapeshifters blown up or locked in some remote corner where help wouldn't arrive anytime soon. I could only get a glimpse of how the battle was developing. The shapeshifters' orbiting move had been brutal and they outnumbered us, but the descendants didn't back down an inch. Those foolish enough to rush for or warp to the teleporter were immediately smacked down by Temp or Cells. I was interested in Temp in particular. He was there one moment and then he wasn't. But that wasn't warping, his movements carried an incomprehensible amount of momentum. Had he accidentally stumbled on me while moving, the impact would have been enough to vaporize me. I should keep my distance. The battle went on for several minutes. The countless bodies and screens were turning into a blur. Everyone was immersed in this excess of violence, tunnel visiting to what was in front of them, trying to kill the enemy. Which was why we noticed the colorful serpent slithering around the premises too late. Cells had noticed what was happening a second quicker. By the time I called out for him, he had already taken out a piece of chalk and was writing something on the floor. The snakes stopped moving at the same time and raised their heads. I wasn't going to stay to find out what they were about to do. I reappeared near Nerus' mansion and barely managed to land on all fours. There were warm ashes all over the place, but they didn't give off the aroma of burning wood. Rather, it was a stench of burning meat. The realization of that difference made my stomach turn a little. Did something happen oblique? It's nominal. He finally showed himself. I hastily shook the ashes off my palms and tried not to let my discomfort show. So then, Cells didn't trust Nerus completely, so he didn't want him on the battlefield. But he had stipulated one exception to this. In the event the battle went south for the descendants, Nerus would come in and destroy the teleporter before the shapeshifters could achieve their objective. He, Cells, and Temp were the only ones with enough wild power to pull off such a feat. The three of them would be there in case Nominal managed to keep two of them occupied. This was a last resort. We didn't know what would happen if the portal was destroyed, but all that warping magic be released at once represented a risk for the city or even the planet. But things might just get to that. Let's not keep them waiting. I extended my hand toward Nerus. In a flash we were back on the beaten battlefield. The tides had turned and the shapeshifters were rushing in, trying to overwhelm our defenses. Cells and Temp were holding on against the onslaught of the colorful serpents. Once I saw Nerus hit one of them with a flaming punch and it coming out intact, I realized this would be an endurance test they would inevitably fail. Sturdy as ever. Nerus clipped his tongue and turned his attention to some of the other safe sisters coming this way. They had been expecting more of a reaction from the safe sisters once they realized that Nerus had betrayed them, but they kept charging forward with no hesitation, as if in a frenzy. After forcing them to back down, Nerus then turned to the teleporter, his intent written all over his eyes. We couldn't hold off against both the army of safe sisters and Nomino, so our only choice was to destroy the teleporter. He leaped toward the teleporter without hesitation, preparing to swing his fist for a devastating attack. But Nomino wouldn't make things easy. Nerus was immediately intercepted by one of the snake's tails, throwing him back. Don't rush, Nerus. If it was that easy, Arceus and Ted would have destroyed the teleporter already. I was already coming up with a plan to get past Nomino's seemingly impenetrable defense. However, when Nerus got back up, he signaled me to step back. What do you plan to do? I don't need to get closer to the teleporter to blow it up. Started from his palm, red vein like cracks started spreading up Nerus' right arm. His fur and flesh burned out, leaving only bone behind. I had heard about this as sex. Nerus' safe-shifting abilities suffered from extremely limited range, but when it came to special safe-shifting, his ability was unmatched. The ability to safe-shift to boost your magical capabilities. What? Wait, Nerus, Arceus and Temp are there. You're going to blow them up too. I will try not to overdo it. If Temp, The snake suddenly crawled around the exposed teleporter room. Temp and Arceus didn't notice, but Nerus and I had a good enough view of the room to see it. A figure was now standing in the center of the room. It was Nomino's main body. In his hand he held a small object, a star ring with runes carved across its surface. Nerus didn't wait for a second. He rushed to the teleporter. Whether he reached it or Nomino intercepted him first, it didn't matter. His next attack would be devastating enough to leave the teleporter unusable either way. However, neither of these happened. Instead, what flew at Nerus was Temp. He had been tossed like a rag doll by one of the snakes. At that vital moment, Nerus hesitated, attacking a second too late. He lost his balance and fell alongside Temp to the floor. Nomino bent down and tore the teleporter's key out of its slot. Suddenly, the world slowed down as Nomino tossed the original key aside and brought his key down. I dived into the layer between the world and nothingness and tried to switch places with Nomino. But when I touched him, nothing happened. Those snakes must have been connected to his body somehow, making him too large for my magic to work. Of course, I could still use Temp. I didn't need to worry about time in this world, but I still swam toward the robot as if my life depended on it. I touched Temp, switching spots with him to immediately jump at Nomino. But I was too slow. I could only watch as Nomino fit the key in the slot and hammer it down with a stomp. Electricity started flowing from the nearby rooms to the key, and then I was blown away by a flash of white light. I must have hit my head with a rock then. I entered a trance during which my vision became dark and all sound became muffled. Still, no more than 3 minutes could have passed until I regained my faculties. As the world became brighter, I was welcomed by the sight of the 2 moons. They were shining brightly. From them a white substance was dripping down to where the teleporter was. That's what it looked like, but to be exact, a white breach had been opened from the teleporter all the way up to the sky. I looked down. It had flown quite far away from the teleporter room. The breach wobbled as fog started coming out of it. It became denser and denser until it took the shape of a massive arm as big as some of the nearby buildings. A white aura surrounded it, both making it hard to see the details and giving it a ghastly appearance. In that moment, Nerus entered my field of view, picked me up, and started to carry me further away from the teleporter. However, our escape route was immediately blocked by the countless purple snakes. Their master appeared floating above them, illuminated by the moons. Big, wide. Step aside, Domino. No matter how authoritative Nerus tried to sound, he wasn't in an advantageous bargaining position. I had recovered enough to move and talk now, so I placed a hand on Nerus' shoulder to grab his attention. Nerus, what about ourselves and Tim? I haven't found them. They must have been blown away by the explosion. That was good news. Ourselves must have had a contingency plan in case things got to this. I didn't know what to expect, but the portal would be closed soon enough. At least that was what I hoped. Whatever the case, we didn't need to stay here any longer either. I focused on diving into the layer between the world and nothingness. The Aeon's body stood out from my stained glass-like surroundings, still emanating a blinding light. As I was about to start looking for the bench, I caught something weird off the corner of my eye. The Aeon moved, and it was slow, sloppy movements like when I was trying to break in for the break. It was swimming at me fast, its hand reaching to grab me. What? I didn't have time to react. My vision was completely white. I barely had time to pull myself back to the physical world. Shit. I felt myself spasm on Nerus' arm for an instant before letting out that curse. What happened? Sorry, Nerus. I tried to warp us out of here, but I was still shaken up and didn't know how to explain it, but Nerus understood that Aeon was interfering with my warping. Let the herald go. The herald. Yes, the vessel. Nerus raised an eyebrow. Oakley is now sensitive, in case you haven't noticed. Big White, how little you know. Domino said with a sneering tone. Earl shook beneath us. The Aeon's pale face was sticking out of the breeze, looking straight at us. We were surrounded, but Domino didn't make any move. He seemed to merely want to cut our escape route. The look in Nerus' eyes was all I needed to figure out what he intended to do. You aren't thinking of fighting that thing, right? Is there any other choice? I bit the tip of my tongue, trying to come up with a plan. But with the Aeon's upper body already sticking out of the breach, there wasn't much time to think. According to Nomino, Aeons were creatures of the flesh. Every instant it sustained its physical body gnawed at its soul. And the teleporter was destroyed with half its body on the side. On this side, its soul would vanish very soon. Even if it managed to make it through completely, without a vessel, its body wouldn't last long. Either way, keeping it occupied was a much better choice than standing here, waiting for it to come at us. Nerus put me down on the ground and patted my head before turning toward the towering, shining giant. Those red tendrils from before spread across his entire body. Fire came out of them as if they were cracks on a lit furnace, which suddenly enveloped him completely. The ants and cologne were replaced by a smell that felt like it burned my nose and the back of my throat as if wanting me to stay away. At that moment, Nerus looked like a true demon. Only his skeleton remained, surrounded by the flaring and mass of fire that had replaced his flesh. He stepped his left behind a flaming footprint. Our surroundings were starting to get hot as well. Nomino pulled a weapon out of his body and bent it to use it as a make-do fan. I could barely follow what happened next. A gust of hot wind hit me, causing me to close my eyes. A red arc appeared between where Nerus was and the Aeon, followed by a large explosion that buried its face in the teleporter. Impressive. The Aeon quickly got back up. Predicting that Nerus would try to attack the teleporter, it opened its mouth and started spewing pale flames that quickly spread across the area. Nerus punched the air beneath him to create an explosion to propel himself away from the ground. The Aeon aimed for him while continuing to spew flames all the while. Some of them were coming our way. One of the snake ribbons wrapped around me and lifted me, pulling me out of the way of the fire. Don't die, Herald. The fire cascade became thinner and denser until it combined to a laser. The Aeon swung its head around, trying to swat Nerus out of the air. Nerus continued creating explosions to move himself out of the horn's way, but it would be over for him if he committed a single mistake. Hey Nomino, is this okay with you? Don't you want the Aeon to possess me? He tilted his head. Acellus has an ace under his sleeve. Very soon the teleporter will be destroyed and the Aeon will be killed if Nerus continues distracted. So you try to stop him? Nomino placed a hand on his chin. No, this is correct. Huh? But I was startled by the laser passing right above us. Many of the buildings nearby were sliced in half. Nerus maneuvered his way around the Aeon and punched it right in the chin. The Aeon's aim was thrown upwards, its laser slicing one of the moons in two. Nomino leaned forward as the police started shaking. Where you go, Nerus? The police had become unstable enough for the Aeon to take notice and seemingly panicked. It dug its claws into the ground, trying to pull itself fully out. Nerus didn't miss the chance to do a barrage of explosive attacks. However, they did little more than slowing down the Aeon, which was growing tired with Nerus' assault. The Aeon started spewing fire wildly, flailing its limbs as if it was trying to kill a fly it had gotten fed up with. Then Nerus committed a terrible mistake. Perhaps because he was growing exhausted from keeping himself mid-air, he failed to dodge one of the Aeon swings. It propelled him directly into the burning ground. But before he could fall completely, he made a last-ditch effort to send himself flying away from the white flames. The blast sent him upwards toward the Aeon and then past itself. Into the breach. How unfortunate. As if waiting for that as a signal, countless lights lit up around the teleporter, followed by multiple explosions. The teleporter was blown to bits, and the breach started to close. The Aeon, still thrashing around, noticed what was happening too late. Although it attempted to escape, it was sliced off in the middle. I squinted and halfway averted my gaze, expecting blood and guts to come out. But what came out were small orbs of light, like dandelion seeds dancing in the breeze. The seeds came apart and then dissolved into tinier and tinier pieces until all that was left was dust. I looked all over the battlefield, hoping to find Nerus. Perhaps my eyes had played a trick on me, after all, but my heart sunk at the realization things went just as I had seen. Panic bubbled up inside of me, just to quickly be replaced by sadness once I realized it was too late for that. Nerus, no! No put me down near the Aeon's corpse. He stepped close to the massive carcass and placed a hand on it. You knew this was going to happen. Yes. Why? First you caused this stupid battle, now this. He didn't respond. He kept caressing the rapidly decomposing carcass. Talk! What are you trying to accomplish exactly? But he continued ignoring me. The frustration and animosity I felt toward his that day in the hall returned to me. They boiled over, surfacing and exploding in an instant. My emotions got the best of me, I grabbed Naruto's shoulder and, while bearing my face, I threw him to the ground. He wasn't resisting, but it still was much easier than I had expected. That lack of resistance prompted me to further violence. I got on top of him and started hitting him over and over. I kept pounding him until my fists were sore. His continued lack of reaction only fueled my anger, so I grabbed at his weapons, trying to pull Naruto apart and tear him to bits. But I quickly found out it was like trying to pull a large nylon thread. He wouldn't break no matter what. So, even the herald is prone to violence. This was all pointless. It felt like he was internally laughing at me. And attempting to harm him was worthless. My anger was worthless. That was what he was telling me. Is get on people's nerves all you know to do? Deep breath, exhaled, and got up. I made the walk away to find ourselves and the others and asked them what we could do about Nerus. Naruto called out to me from behind. What do you want? He was back to rubbing the Aeon's corpse as if that would make it feel any better. Harold, what you want is it out of your reach. I raised an eyebrow. The descendants will help you. The big white is a say to the Nails. Descendants, have you not noticed how it shows up that you? He hated Nails more he saw and he's hating you too. You did something you weren't supposed to do. You learned something you weren't supposed to learn and say to the learned it because of you. Ourselves won't help, no one will help. He wanted to get rid of him, so he waited for him to die before the sword to tell, but he'll be in the void as good as dead. You're on your own now. You can't trust the descendants or the Sage Sisters. He will get rid of you too. Your only option is to take matters into your own hands. Naruto pulled his hand away from the Aeon's corpse, and alongside it he put out something white pure, the last part of this creature's yet to lose its brilliance. If so, then this is what you meant by making me the vessel. The descendants won't help. My power has been drained. You must take matters into your own hands. My hand shook. When I briefly turned around, I saw the approaching silhouettes of my siblings drawing nearer. They would be here any second now. They wouldn't allow this to happen. What Naruto offered me was a simple choice. Leaving my brothers or take matters into my own hands, as he had put it. What an unfair choice. He must have known the decision had been made for me from the start. To be honest, I didn't think the Aeons and us were that different, despite them objecting to our existence. Perhaps seeing themselves in inferior life forms was part of why they hated us. No, that wouldn't be fair. We were to them as this world was to theirs. An imitation, a tainted copy. Or perhaps an evolution, because despite our similarities, our flesh granted us unique needs and advantages. As for needs, I suppose looking at Naruto would be a good indicator, since he was the closest thing to an Aeon I knew. Naruto hadn't been born with the intrinsic desire to pass down his genes or look after the next generation. He didn't have any need for social relationships beyond work, so he didn't love or hate anyone. But mortal Sage Sisters and descendants had an advantage those like the Aeons or Naruto couldn't dream of. To appropriate was someone else's, to create out of someone else's pain. It was something only us born in the tainted realms of limits could do. Naruto was able to observe this, learn about it, but he could never do it himself. For him, it was a forbidden act. I let down my hands. They reminded me of how Nerus looked before he transformed into that demonic form. But the white veins protruding between my scales swung until they disappeared. I clenched my fists and closed my eyes, reveling in the new power circulating within me. Was this what you used to create those keys, Naruto? What were you really trying to accomplish? And where are you? The sounds I had been hearing approaching me finally stopped right behind me. I turned around to face my siblings. None of them dared take a single step closer to me. Oblivion, what have you done? There was a hint of shock in Elsa's eyes. So it was that obvious, huh? Don't worry, the Aeon is dead, but its power still resides in you. This is what we were trying to prevent, Oblivion. Trying to prevent the Aeon from gaining a vessel and destroying our world. The Aeon is dead. Do you really think I'm capable of doing that? I can't tell. I blinked, a bit taken aback. Ever since you came back, you've been behaving so differently, Oblivion. When I look at you, I don't recognize you. And now you've rendered this entire battle pointless for our side. Perhaps you aren't siding with the Aeons or Nomino, but how can I know you aren't playing into their plans? Oblivion, what will you do with the Aeon's power? The only known way to allow someone in here from the void is to open a breach, and Nomino has already done twice. Will you make us go through the third battle? Well, I didn't know how to answer. Marcel said the truth, so he was right to suspect I would do something of the sort. To be honest, I was willing to. I wanted to ignore it, but it was the truth. Marcel had exposed that uncomfortable truth, so looked down, saying, he sighed and shook his head. The descendants wouldn't help me. Naruto had exhausted the last of his power, creating the key he used this time, so the breach would never open by his hand again. The only one who could create a breach now was me. Therefore, it was dangerous to allow me near descendant installations or anywhere with a portal for that matter. I knew what Osiris was getting at, so rather than hearing it, I turned on my heel and walked away. I walked aimlessly, not thinking of anything in particular, but subconsciously I was digesting the reality of my situation. Hot tears ran down my cheeks and my emotions bubbled out of control. But I couldn't afford to lose my cool, no. I had to think. Nerus wasn't gone, he was merely outside this world. Saving him was impossible, not for me. The problem lay in how I would go about it. It was clear the descendants wouldn't help, but that didn't mean I would resort to Nebano's methods. There were still months we didn't know. So I made my decision. I would look for a way to bring Nerus back that wouldn't incur a cost in mortal lives like the battle the Aeon had. I had all the time in the world. I needed to keep calm and think, or find a way to do this without sacrifices. And as for Nomino, I would use his time to find out his true objective. And then I would ruin it. I would destroy him. I looked up at the two moons and wiped my tears. What cruel irony, meeting again after 200 years just to be separated once more. Maybe this too, No, it doesn't matter. I'll be looking forward to our next meeting, Nerus. This time, I will have to wait too. The moons disappeared from my sight. Leaves and branches broke under my bare feet. Finalizing playback. Alright, so both Nerus and Obli are separated again. That was a very brief reunion there. So Nerus, he was able to get the Aeons into the portal. I guess I don't know, but he was able to get the Aeons trapped under the ground, or pulled under the ground to somewhere else away from this world. But in doing so, he also got himself trapped and stuck out of this world underground, I guess. But anyway, he's not here anymore, so this resulted in, had mixed results. So yeah, well, Nerus is gone, but the battle's over for now. But Nerus is gone, and Oceros, if Nominal says true, those lines I had to read really fast. I hope that doesn't happen again. But anyway, and what Nominal said was true, then Oceros hated Nerus, and that he very much does not like sex revealing information to Nerus, who was a safe-shifter. And he's, to Oceros, Obli is like a totally different person. So, apparently, Nerus was sad that Sats kept secrets from him about his past, because Nerus was sad that Obli kept the secret from him, when he was Sax, and that he never really revealed until it was too late that he was an angel, or a descendant, really, and not a safe shifter, and that Sax had all his memories as a descendant, as Obli. And Obli felt guilty about it, but he didn't want to apparently give him false hope, I guess, something like that, or he was afraid of how he would react if he told him that he was a descendant. But Nerus, in response, said that he would have loved him anyway. He would have tried to make it work out. I understand Nerus being disappointed about Sax or Obli not trusting him. At the same time, I can understand why Obli decided not to tell Nerus. I can understand both of them. So, I like the music about the fight scene and all that. It really tells the situation of what's happening, like the urgency of everything. So, once again, we got to say goodbye to Nerus. Very brief reunion. So, we'll continue with chapter 2 next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye.